Because in part 2, I talk about how we can overcome the false beliefs and the religious teachings that prevent us from reconnecting. And I also discuss how it's even possible to communicate with those in spirit. So, the first obstacle, we said a few minutes ago that we all believe that we're not supposed to stay in connection with loved ones in spirit. Now, how do I know that this is a false belief or teaching? May I tell you how?
Yes, please.
Okay. So it was my first night back from Italy. And I heard Jean speaking to me, and he was quoting something I didn't recognize. Now, the next day I went to his priest, and I told him that Jean's been talking to me, and he's been quoting something. I don't know what it is. Now, the priest raised his brow in obvious skepticism, like, yo, babe has really lost it, But
She's a grieving widow.
Yeah, she's lost her marbles. The elevator's not going to the top floor. But then, when I told him what Jean had been quoting to me, he blanched, he crossed himself, and he said, "Dear God, Jamie, at first I did not believe that Jean was speaking to you, but I do now." And then he told me, "You are quoting an obscure biblical passage from the Communion of Saints." Like I would know. I never read the Bible. Jean and I never discussed religion.
You were an atheist, basically.
I was.
Jewish atheist.
Exactly, devout.
Yeah.
It took me a year to understand why Jean chose to quote that and only that passage to me. Now, remember, he was a religious pioneer in life, and he continues to be in the afterlife. And what he was doing here was giving me the biblical foundation for why we're supposed to reconnect and stay connected. The Communion of Saints says that our loved ones in spirit are one with or in communion with God and the saints. And since the Bible is telling us we're supposed to stay in communion and communication with God and the saints, it means that we are supposed to stay in communion and communication with our loved ones in spirit because they are one with God and the saints. Okay?
So how did that get twisted to where we're not supposed to be doing this?
Well, the thing is, Jean tells me that it's a financial thing because the church doesn't want to be cut out of the equation. Then they won't make money. Because what if you don't need the priest to be your intercessor to God, spirit, saints, your loved ones in spirit? You can just reconnect now. Well, now we're cutting out the middleman. Not good for business. So the point of this message is what we have been told about the afterlife is dead wrong, if you'll pardon my pun. Because as Jean said, heaven is a state, not a place. Heaven is all around us. Heaven is here and now. And this means we are not supposed to live in an emotional wasteland, separated from those we love, waiting until we die and supposedly enter heaven, because heaven is now. And this means reconnect with your loved ones now.
Yeah. Well, doesn't that almost mean, too, that we are also one with heaven now?
That's what I'm saying. Heaven is now. Jean said heaven is a state, not a place.
Yeah, I was just writing that down. I love that.
Heaven is all around us. Heaven is here and now. Death is an illusion. So all of this means we don't wait to die and enter heaven. We can live heaven now, and we can reconnect with those in spirit or heaven now. Now, I want to talk also about some of the other misconceptions that surround afterlife communication. Here's a biggie that I have heard a lot. Well, it prevents you from moving on with your life. People will often ask this, and nothing could be farther from the truth. Because, in fact, when we reconnect with our loved ones in spirit, we actually transform our grief to joy, and we are more able to fully enter our lives, to get back into our lives. People who are grieving and crying, and they're disconnected and they're missing someone who is in spirit, when I help them reconnect, I can't tell you, I did the Coast to Coast radio show. Love Never Dies became an overnight bestseller. It sold out on Amazon. And then I got calls and letters from people all over the world telling me that my method of reconnecting, instant joy, their grief lifted. So it is not true. It does not prevent you from moving on. It helps you enter your life more fully and with joy. Now, here's another misconception. Well, if you continue loving those in spirit, you're not able to love another person on the earth plane, especially if we're talking about a spouse or a life partner. Well, this is also untrue, because it would be like saying to a mother, you love your first child with all your heart. Well, that's it. You can't have another child, right? But of
Yes.
course, that's not true. Our hearts have so much room to love, and we have all the room in our hearts to love everyone who walks the earth and every being that's walking in spirit. Now, here's another one I heard a couple weeks ago. You prevent them from performing their holy work. Well, this is pure garbage too, because their holy work is to love us, to support us, to hold our hands as we walk down the bumpy road called life, to help us fulfill our spiritual journeys. So they say again and again, as Jean said to me, what else is there for me to do? It's my full-time occupation to love you.
I did. I read that in the book. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I hear it all the time.
And I just wonder, what is it about? I mean, other than the money thing or the monetary power struggle that goes on within the church wanting dollars,
It's
is there a
yes. Well,
psychological reason that people would have developed that as a belief that there
well,
isn't?
also there's this misconception that you're opening the door to evil,
Yes, okay.
and that, oh my goodness, the priest is the only one that can stand there with the holy water and, keep the devil out. It's
Keep the
not
devil away.
not true either. In fact, Jean in his life never spoke about the devil or any of these things. It
Mhm.
didn't even exist. And I have never experienced anything of the kind. And if there are evil spirits, I can tell you, your loved ones in spirit are your gatekeepers. They are here to stand and protect you. And I have never heard of a story of anyone being accosted by devils or evil spirits. And on top of everything else, we all have an internal spiritual call blocking. You don't want to take a call, don't take the call. But again, I've never seen anything of this kind.
Yeah. And if you go back to even the Native American traditions, they always talk about they walk with the ancestors. They never appear to be separate from them. They are always
There,
alive with them.
there you go. There
So,
you go.
if you go back to roots of our civilization, even the whole concept of death was different. Somehow, as we moved into the more modern times, these beliefs come into play. For whatever
Exactly,
reason they come into play.
exactly. And the unfortunate, age of science and everything having to be empirically proven, the dichotomy between science and the mystery and the divine.
Yeah.
And we have moved farther and farther away from embracing the fact that we don't know so many things. And of course, some of the latest quantum physicists are actually bridging the gap. And actually in part 2, the second half of part 2 of Love Never Dies, I talk about the latest science that explains how spirit communication is even possible. But just for the purposes of our discussion, the most simple thing to say is that we're really talking about energetic communication.
Right.
And we energetically communicate as human beings all the time. And we are born with the innate ability to communicate energetically. Think about how we do this on a daily basis. You park at a light. You look over at the driver in the neighboring car. Doesn't that driver always look back at you? Why? He or she senses the energetic frequency of your gaze and looks back.
Right.
Twins, how do they know when the other is in trouble?
My husband is a twin. He has an identical twin, and that happens.
And they know.
All the time. Mm-hmm.
And even when they live on opposite ends of the world, energetic communication. How does a mother know her kid's in trouble? It's the same thing. And close couples. And we are not taught this in our history books, but many prominent figures throughout history, from Socrates to Helen Keller, have reported having personal contact with spirits. And even Thomas Edison was quoted in Scientific American in I think it was 1921, he said, it's reasonable to conclude that those who have left this earth would like to communicate with those that they have left here. And he said that it was possible to construct an apparatus that would be so delicate that if there are personalities in other existences or spheres that want to get in touch with us, the apparatus will at least give them a better opportunity. And he was actually creating this apparatus when he left his body in 1931. And even
like
Albert
a cosmic joke. We can't prove it now.
Yeah, but actually, I understand now, since there's a new machine that is enabling people to do this. And the father of quantum physics, Albert Einstein, in his
Yeah.
introduction to Upton Sinclair's book, Mental Radio, asked science to take this phenomenon seriously. Sigmund Freud wrote in 1921, if I had my life to live over again, I would devote it to psychic research rather than psychoanalysis. And Carl Jung also wrote extensively on this topic. So we don't know these things. We're not taught these things. And the bottom line is the reason we don't reconnect is because we've been told it's not possible. Now, I want to give you a story that illustrates how I know this is what we've been told. And it was Jean's priest who told me this. I went to his priest and I said, Jean continues to make his presence known. And I started giving him some examples. And the priest said to me, Jamie, once he's in heaven, you're not going to hear from him anymore. Now, what? There are no cell towers in heaven? The signals from Earth don't reach heaven, So our human conceptions are just dead wrong. Now, all day this was bothering me. Once he's in heaven, I won't hear from him anymore. So now I make the circle for my group. I run a group in my home office, and everyone who's a member of the group is late, except Ashley, who's a new member, doesn't know me, doesn't know I'm widowed. It's her first time in group. She's sitting alone with me in the group room. The group door is closed. All of a sudden, I hear ding, ding. That's the sound that my front door makes when the burglar alarm registers it's opening. Now I hear very loud footsteps, and the footsteps sort of pound and then stop in my waiting room adjacent to the group room. Now I say to her, gee, I guess somebody came at the wrong time thinking he or she has an individual session. Now I hear the footsteps pounding in the opposite direction, and I hear the front door go ding, ding again. So I say, excuse me, I've got to go speak to the person. Now, in the time it took me to go from the group room to the front door, a few steps, there is no way a person could have gone down my very long driveway and reached my parking area, which is very far from the front door, and gotten into his car and driven away. Not possible, because I would have seen the person walking.
Right.
I open the front door. There's nobody walking, and there's no car in the parking area. So I come back and I say to my patient, Ashley, there was nobody there. And she looks at me and she says, it was a spirit. That was Jean's answer to the priest's statement, you won't hear from me anymore. Did you hear those loud footsteps?
Amazing. These things remind me, I think probably every human has experienced something like this. When my mother-in-law passed, we were all at her house. She wanted to die at home, and so we honored that wish. And when she passed away, we all moved out into the living room, and we were sitting in her living room. It was like the last, 1 minute to 5 on a Memorial weekend or a Labor Day weekend. So we're like, now what do we do? Are the mortuaries closed? We're all considering all these kinds of things. And then all of a sudden, the picture of her and her husband's wedding picture flew off the wall and landed on the floor. And without skipping a beat, every one of us looked at each other and said, well, I guess she found Dad. It was just this universal sort of belief that we knew she was telling us. She found her, she was okay. She'd found her husband.
Right.
It's so just fantastic.
And it is so wonderful. It's so uplifting. So now in part 3 of Love Never Dies,
mm-hmm.
I show you, and now that we've gotten rid of all the misconceptions that hold you back and the false beliefs and the false religious teachings. So now in part 3, I show you how you can establish your own connection with a loved one in spirit without the assistance of a channel or a medium or a psychic. Now, I remind you again, since we're all born with the innate ability to communicate with spirit, and the communicating with spirit is nothing more than learning how to tune into what I call the spirit channel of your brain. Okay? So in part 3, I show you how to tune into your spirit channel.
Can I stop you for just 1 second? A bird just flew at my window. As in, somebody just validated what you're saying. And
I know. I know. He always does these wonderful things.
It was just a tap. It was.
Let me tell you, I did an interview last week, Janet, and the interviewer said when she was reading Love Never Dies, she was weeping and she pouring out tears, and she didn't know why. She said, because I haven't lost anybody yet. And she said, your husband told me I should play you a particular song when I do the interview. So she says, let me play it now. And it is, You Are My Rose. Well, I freak out because Jean gave me roses every week. And I'm going to tell you a story about roses in a few minutes. So I freak out and I start saying to her, oh my gosh, do you hear me? He cut my line. He made it dead. So and she couldn't hear me. That's one of the many ways that his energetic frequency, interrupts the energetic frequency. And so when I came back on, she was covered in chills,
Oh,
So the thing is, here we go. I'm going to show you how to tune to your spirit channel. And just the way Jean showed me how to do it, I'm going to show you. So
okay.
the first chapter in part 3 is what I'm calling create a state of receptivity. Because Jean said to me very early after he left his body, Jamie, the noise of the day drowns me out. So anytime you want to hear me, come to the bed and be still and quiet. So in this chapter in Love Never Dies, I show you how to find pockets of peace, how to sit in silence, how to turn off the TV and the music. I talk about peaceful practices, yoga, tai chi, qigong. Find the one that's right for you. I give you some breathing exercises that Jean taught me because spirit is born on the breath, and you can actually bring yourself into communion with spirit just through breathing. And then I talk about also how to surrender to all your emotional states, but not allow your emotional states to wash you overboard. Because the thing is, emotional upset acts very much like atmospheric storms. Atmospheric storms block the receiving of radio or
Yes, my
phone.
internet goes down, my TV gets
Right.
disrupted. Yeah.
So it's the same with us. So imagine you're driving in a tunnel, right? And you have received a call on your cell phone, but you don't register it because you're in this dark tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our dark tunnels of grief do the same thing to us. They actually block the sending and the receiving of signals. We don't even know that we're getting signals, even though they're being sent. So I show you how to titrate your emotions so that you're aware, but don't allow yourself to get too upset, because if you're too upset, you block not only the sending, but also the receiving of signals. Then I also show you in this chapter in Love Never Dies how to use hypnagogic or twilight states, that state just before you wake up. Just before you fully wake up in the morning and just before you go to sleep, where you're more open.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also show you how to use nature to help you be more open to the spirit channel. And then I have some really fun exercises for opening your 5 senses. Because remember, spirit beings are pure energy. So they're able to energetically send signals to all your senses. So the more your sensory receiver is turned on, the easier it's going to be for you to perceive the signs that are being sent your way all the time. Now, speaking of signs, the next chapter in part 2 of Love Never Dies, and this is part 3 of Love Never Dies, is to recognize the signs of spirit presence in your life. Now, a lot of people say to me, I'm not getting signs. That's happening to you. It's not happening to me. But invariably, I just lay out a list of the signs of spirit presence. And in no time, they're saying to me, oh, well, that happened. And so did that. So did this. And they just overlooked it. But again, freed from the human vessel, they are able to influence the material world in infinite ways. Signs are infinite. Sounds, animals behaving oddly, like that little chipmunk, weird sensations, drafts, temperature changes, chills, goose flesh, symbolic communications, butterflies. And they also will often manifest coins that were minted on a year that was significant to you. Now, here's a story I know you'll love, because you love stories that involve other people as validation. So it was the anniversary week of Jean's bodily departure. And I mentioned to a new patient of mine, Kyla, whenever it's the anniversary week, he will always drop coins on me that were minted on the year that he left his body, just to remind me I'm here with you. At that moment, she blinks and she says, oh my gosh, Jamie, I almost forgot. She says, you see the cowboy boots I'm wearing? Well, they were off my feet in the middle of my bedroom at home when I saw a coin careening from the ceiling out of nowhere, and it landed in one of my boots. And I got the message that the coin was for you. And she says, I nearly forgot. So she says, let me give it to you now. So she takes her boot off, turns it upside down, hands me the coin, at which point I hear Jean saying to me, you'll see, it was minted in the year I left my body. I go, get my glasses? It was minted. So now, so becoming aware of the signs is very often sufficient for most of us to begin the process of reconnecting. But